त्वमेव माता च पिता त्वमेव बन्धुश्च सखा त्वमेव विद्या द्रविणं त्वमेव सर्वं मम देवदेव। श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तिसुदेशिकेन्द्रं द्वैपायनं सूत्रकृतं मुनीन्द्रं श्रीशङ्करं भाष्यकृतं यतीन्द्रं मद्देशिकञ्चापि नमामि विद्यै। ॐ नमो ब्रह्मादिभ्यो ब्रह्मविद्यासम्प्रदायकर्तृभ्यो वंशऋषिभ्यो महद्भ्यो नमो गुरुभ्यः। सर्वोपप्लवरहितप्रज्ञानगणः प्रत्यगर्तो ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मि। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम्। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयः प्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दुग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्ससुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं। भीष्मद्रोणतथा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला। अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोत्तीर्णाः खलु पाण्डवैरणनदी कैवर्तकः केशवः। पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थघण्टोत्कटं नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाबोधितं। लोके सज्जनषट्पदैरहरः पेपीयमानं मुदा भूयाद्भारतपङ्कजं कलिमल प्रध्वंसिनः श्रेयसे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवं। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः। ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः। ॐ श्रीकृष्णाय परमात्मने नमः। Pranams everyone. So we started on to the 16th chapter last week, where we had an introduction of what is Daivi-Sampad, what is Asuri-Sampad. Basically we said anybody who has got Tama-pradhana or Rajo-pradhana guna, they are considered as Asuri, and whoever is Sattva-pradhana, they are considered as Daivi. So what is the benefit of having the Daivi-Sampad? The benefit of having Daivi-Sampad is that that person will go for Nivritti Marga. A person who has got more of Asuri-Sampad, that person will take to Pravritti Marga. Pravritti Marga meaning that within Dharma Shastras you have Pravritti Marga, Nivritti Marga. Nivritti Marga is Dharma and Moksha. Pravritti Marga is basically Artha and Kama. So a person who has got more of this Sattva Guna, who is a Daivi-Sampad person, will take to Dharma and Moksha. And as I said, I mean, one of the things that for more Dharma and Moksha, why is it this? One is it that this Pravritti, If you have sattva guna, you will go to nivritti marga and therefore dharma and moksha. Not only that, this value, when you get it, why is it important? This values, because we need to get this moksha. For us to get this moksha, we need to remove ignorance, and to remove ignorance, one has to ensure that there are no issues with either the subject or the object or the instrument of knowledge. And we saw that there are three possible problems, obstructions, when we try to remove ignorance. One was pramana asambhavana, then prameya asambhavana, and then we saw pramatir asiddhi. So there are three problems that might come. So in case of this Vedantic knowledge, it is not just the issue of, it is not just the intellect and mind that needs to be ready and qualified. There is something more. And that something more is basically the sadhana chatushtayam, the quality of the values that a person has to be impeccable. And that is qualified, and that is called as sadhana chatushtayam. It is called as sadhana chatushtayam in Shastras. We had seen the sadhana chatushtayam already in Introduction to Vedanta classes. Basically, Viveka, Vairagya, Shatakam and Mumukshutvam. So this sadhana chatushtaya sampatti person is also called as Daivi-Sampad by Bhagavan. Sampat we saw as wealth. Wealth that this is the only wealth that will remain with us. Anything else that we actually gather or acquire in this life, whether it is be possessions, property, wealth, anything can leave us. Even people, relations, anything can leave us. The only thing that will stand by us throughout are these values. So this is very important. Hence, Shastras call them as Sampat. So with this introduction, we will now go into the first sloka of 16th chapter. अतः षोडशोऽध्यायः श्रीभगवानुवाच अभयं सत्त्वसंशुद्धिः ज्ञानयोगो व्यवस्थितिः दानं दमश्च यज्ञश्च स्वाध्यायस्तप आर्जवम् अभयं सत्त्वसंशुद्धिः ज्ञानयोगव्यवस्थितिः दानं दमश्च यज्ञश्च Swadhyayastapa Arjavam. So Bhagavan basically gives all the Daivi Sampat in the first three slokas itself within this chapter. There are 26 Sampats he is going to give within three slokas. We already saw in the 13th chapter there were 20. And so Bhagavan is basically giving more values here. There may be some overlaps as I mentioned. In this first sloka itself, Bhagavan is giving nine of those values. The first one is Abhayam. Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhihi. So first value that Bhagavan gives is Abhayam. Abhayam means fearlessness. So fear is something that every one of us have experienced at various stages. We have all experienced fear right from childhood. We all have this bhayam, something or other which will create this fear. And many experts have actually explained this fear in many ways. Raja Bhadruhari has actually says Sarvam Vastu Bhayamvitam Bhuvihi. All the things in the world is always mixed with fear. That is what he says. And he gives some example. He says, there is a famous shloka. He says, Bhoge roga bhayam, kule chuti bhayam, vitte nriplad bhayam, mane dhainya bhayam, bhale ripur bhayam, rupe jaraya bhayam, Shastre Vadi Bhayam, Gune Kalabhayam, Kate Kritanta Bhayam, Sarvam Vastu Bhayanvitam Bhuvi, Nrinam Vairagya Eva Abhayam. So this is actually a sloka from or a stanza from Vairagya Shatakam, which he has written, where he talks about, basically the Vairagya Shatakam is basically about slokas about getting Vairagya, and there he is actually calling out that this Bhayam, which is actually the 31st sloka in that Vairagya Shatakam, we have Bhayam on everything. He says Bhoge Roga Bhayam. In enjoyment, we have fear. We have fear what if we enjoy too much, what happens to our sense organs? It'll get fail. It'll start deteriorating. So Bhoge Roga Bhayam, and we will have some diseases as well. So if we watch too much of television, there is a problem that our eyes will have to face. So Bhoge Roga Bhayam. Kule Chuti Bhayam. Kule means in the lineage. Some people have this, feeling that I am actually from this particular family and all those things. So there also you have problem. The problem thing is everyone of this world wants to be joyful and happy. But the problem is such a state of being joyful or happy is rarely possible. Because there is always some bit of anxiety, there is some bit of tension, there is some bit of fear. And if we start looking into ourselves, we can actually feel that the mind is fearful of every moment. Even small things, insignificant things, it will start mattering to us. We have this anxiety, we have this fear. As a student, we are fearful of getting scolded. We are fearful of getting scolded by either our parents or by teachers or anything. A mother, when she actually, rearing the children, she is actually fearful whether the children will be brought up well, whether they will be good citizens in the society. Or even a lady in the house, when she actually cooks food, even there are always some bit of fear whether people will appreciate the food that I cook. So everything that we do, there is some bit of anxiety or fear always mixed with whatever we do. In office, we have this fear of facing a meeting or meeting the boss or talking in a group. There is always this. And what this sloka does is basically the sloka says it's everything in life is mixed with fear. There is always a fear mixed in it. And if we have to enjoy that, we do enjoy, but it is still not happy. We are not still happy. If we try to do, because everything associated with this, there is always this fear. We don't really enjoy things as much as we would like to. Suppose I enjoy good food. I like good food. But if I have a very weak stomach, then I will not be able to enjoy. Even as I eat, I will have this thought process of what will happen to my health after that. So Bhoge Roga Bhayam. So even as I enjoy, I have this problem. And then there is always Kule Chuti Bhayam. I have this problem when I'm proud of my lineage, but then I have this problem. What if somebody, something goes wrong? There is a fear of downfall. There is this fear of downfall. Then in Vitte Nirpalat Bhayam. Even the kings, they fear the wealth that they have, because they think that their country can be, their kingdom can be overthrown by another king. Then Mane Dainya Bhayam. So some people have this prestige, Mane prestige. But then Nirpalat Bhayam, Dainya Bhayam is basically where I have this fear of humiliation, that I have been humiliated somewhere. Somebody do not give me enough respect. Somebody does not. I have this prestige, but I have this feeling that if I go for that meeting, that person will not talk to me properly. So I have this fear of being humiliated. And then there is Bale Ripubhayam. Even when a powerful person, he fears an enemy or an adversary. Rupe Jaraya Bhayam. This is very common. Rupe, I mean, some people have their feeling that I am beautiful, I am handsome, and all those things. But what happens? Even there you have this fear of old age. Oh, as I get older, what will happen? As we see our high, hair fall, or as we see our hair turning gray, we have this fear. Am I losing my youth? Am I losing my beauty? And then Shastre Vadibhayam. Shastre Vadibhayam means some people are scripturally very proficient. They have their erudition, but then they are also afraid of learned opponents. So they have this Vadibhayam means, Vadam means a person who comes for a debate. So they have this fear of learned opponents. And then Gune Khalabhayam. Even when I gain some virtue, there is a fear of another person, wicked person, who will try to create problems for me. And then finally, Kaye Kritantat Bhayam. Even when I think of this body, as I grow old, I have this fear of death. I don't want to leave this body. I have this fear of death as well. So everything in this life, there is always fear. There is nothing in this world that is not associated with fear. So the question then he answers, where is then the peace? How to get rid of this fear? Is there any state where we will be free of this fear, this anxiety? He basically gives an answer later. We'll see that later. But Bhayam is inherent. And Bhayam is actually an expression of dukkham. It is an expression of fear, of sadness, sorrow. What is actually fear? If we see a little deeper, right? The fear that we experience in the present is nothing but, the fear is mostly, or 99% of the fear that we have in the present is actually about something that is going to happen in future. If what we fear happens, then it becomes dukkham. Or in other words, our fear is about we becoming sad in the future. That is what, suppose if I say I am actually afraid that I might die, it is about the fear of future, and the sadness that I am going to get. Or if I am going to fear, if I am having this fear that somebody whom I love will leave me, somebody is going near, some of my loved ones, one of my loved ones is actually nearing death, then this feeling is that I will become sad in future, and therefore this fear is actually struck me. So most of the fear can be categorized or can be identified into this bucket. It can be said it is only a case of something that might create sadness in future is creating a fear in my mind now. So if we really look at it, we always want to achieve, we want to always possess things that we like, and we do not want to have things that we don't like. Anything that I don't like, I don't want it near me. Anything that I like, it should be always with me. So this is our likes and dislikes. And our likes and dislikes will actually are the cause of my sukham and dukkham. Because what is my dukkham? Dukkham is nothing but when the things that I like are not next to me, or when the things that I don't like are with me. So anything that is Sukham is basically when things are next to me, which I like, are next to me, and things that I don't like are away from me. It can be people, it can be relations, it can be objects, it can be possessions, it can be situations. So this is Dukkham. And this Dukkham, this Bhayam is basically the Dukkha Hetu Darshanam. It is actually the Karanam, the cause for the Dukkham. So Bhayam is actually seeing the possibility of the cause of sadness. I see the cause of sadness and I get that fear. It is that the likable thing might leave me and I get sad, I get afraid. For example, if somebody whom I'm close to, if I get this feeling that they might leave me, the very thought, they may not have even left, the very thought that they might leave me will create fear in me, will create sorrow in me. So 99% of the Bhayam that we face are only these sort of fears. The fear of a Dukkham that might come and hit us in future. And if we analyze further this Dukkham, if we really look into this Bhayam and whether this event that we are fearing, whether will it happen in future, if we really analyze it, only 5% of the cases would actually happen. 95% of the cases it would not happen in the future. I would have thought that by today, while going to the office, that I'm going to have a bad day in my office, my boss is going to be unhappy with me. I have this fear when I go there, and then this is basically because of something that might happen in the future. I'm having a fear about something that even if it happens, it's not going to be end of the world for me, but it is going to create me sadness. And because the sadness would come to me, I'm actually afraid of it right now. But then if I go to the office and then I see that actually it was a very nice day, or even when the boss was not in the office, or whatever it could be, only 5% of the time that it could really happen. But for that, we would still be carrying this fear. And every such incident is like that. At home, if an elderly person goes out, and if that person does not come home on time, we'll start fearing. We'll start fearing about their safety. We'll think about thousand things. We'll imagine accidents and whatnot. And we would have probably had more accidents and deaths in our mind than it actually happens in our real lives. So we always have this anxiety. So this is the cause of the most important cause of the fear that we have in our mind. Now, if we actually do a little more vichara, right, and do analyze a little more, and then we see, even if that particular incident that we think is going to happen really happens, even if that dukkham is a real possibility, say inevitable one, for example, death is inevitable. The thing is, it is sorrow, no doubt, it is sadness, no doubt, it is going to come and affect us, but it is not going to stay with us forever. That sadness is going to be there for some time, and then it is going to leave us. So what we have to then do is, it doesn't make sense to be afraid of it. Let the sadness come, let it go through me. After some time, it is going to leave me. So if we have to We have to understand that. Because even when things are going well, we are always having this fear. Because what happens? The mind starts projecting. The mind starts projecting things that might happen or that could happen, and typically it projects only the negative things. What if I don't do my exam well? What if I fail in my interview? What if I don't get the job? What if that person does not behave to me well? What if that person does not recognize me? What if I go to that particular wedding and they do not give me the respect? All those things. What if that person does not talk to me? What if this relationship fails? It's all a question of projection of the mind. So the bhayam mostly is caused by our imagination. And what actually it remains is the dukkham that is caused by the fear. So it creates dukkham. There is some other people who think, there are a certain section of people who think that, they have another kind of fear. And that fear is basically Shastram upadishte arte bhayam. That what they say is, basically if I follow what the Shastra says, would it lead to my downfall? There is some section of the people who thinks that by following Shastras, you will have a downfall. They do not have any conviction on the Shastras itself. They have a fear of following Shastras. For example, if Shastra says Satyam Vada, say the truth, then they start questioning, how can one live in this life if we go by Shastras? How can we actually say truth in all situations? It's not possible. If we do it, we will have a downfall. So we have a fear of following Shastras. Basic reason is we don't have trust. We have our doubts that if I follow the Shastras, I might lose my life. As in, materially speaking, I may not get what I want, or I might be considered as a failure by others. Some people say in businesses you cannot speak the truth. Otherwise you will not be able to survive. So there is no point in following Shastras. So some people are like that. And Shastra says, for example, it says ekakitvam. Basically it says remain alone, be alone, do sadhanas, seek solitude. Again there is a fear. There is a fear of being alone. That is another kind of fear. Shastra says aparigraha, as in do not hold on to things. Do not hold things that are not necessary. Basically, parigraha means hoarding things. Aparigraha means not holding on to anything. How many of us will be able to accept that? We think we should be keeping on something until the end of our life. So there is a fear that I should not be cheated by following the Shastras. So there is a fear of Shastras also. And they have this fear especially at Vanaprastha stage, when retired stage. Shastra says in retired stage, do not keep anything. And the children are supposed to take care of the parents financially, emotionally. But then these days, the elders or the parents, they don't trust the sons or the daughter-in-laws or their daughters and son-in-laws. And typically the sons only take care of the parents because they don't want to lose the property or the wealth. So even that actually is done out of fear. They don't want to lose the property or wealth. So that fear of losing makes them to take care. So whatever we do in life, it is either out of love or out of fear. So this is what we've seen. And when I said Shastras, not following Shastras, it is only the Asuras who don't follow Shastras. They don't believe in Shastras. So if somebody says they don't believe in Shastras, Shastras themselves classify them as asuras because they feel that they will be let down by Shastras. So doing more vichara on this bhayam, this fear. Actually, the fear can also be classified into three. One, nasha nimitta bhayam, the fear of destruction. Nasha nimitta bhayam, the fear of destruction. Mainly we can say the fear of death. Death. Fear of death is one type of bhayam. Then there is second classification of fear, which is basically dukkha nimitta bhayam, which we have been seeing so far. Dukkha nimitta bhayam is basically the fear of this pain and sorrow that I might get. There is always this fear that I might get sad, or there is something that will happen which is not to my liking, or there is something that might happen which will create pain in me, physical, emotional, whatever. Then the third one is ajnana nimitta bhayam. Ajnana nimitta bhayam is basically the fear of ignorance. So I don't know certain things and therefore I am afraid. I don't know what I have to speak today in the meeting and therefore I am afraid. So there is this ajnana nimitta bhayam. So nasha nimitta bhayam is the main one, key one, which is basically the fear of death. Now some people might claim that, and this nasha nimitta bhayam is universal. Some people might claim that they are not afraid of death. That's probably because they have not come to that stage. When people are around us, when things are going well for us, when everything seems to be nice and smooth, we will not have this fear. But to have this fear of death, nothing. If we just remain, if we start living alone, doesn't matter that you need to go to the forest to live alone. You can go to a city where you don't know anyone and you live alone, not interacting with anybody, not creating any friends. Live alone for a few weeks, we will start feeling this fear of death. This fear will manifest within us. The fear of death is universal. So nasha nimitta bhayam is basically fear of death, but it also will include also the fear of destruction also of anything that I possess. For example, wealth. There is a fear that I might lose my wealth. I have actually invested in some place or in some property or in some stock or in some place which is having a downfall, or it's actually going through some recession or whatever. So this wealth leaving me is also a fear. Or I have children and I have a fear that they may not take care of me. There is another fear there. Or there is a fame or position that I have gained in my life and that is going through nasham, as in somebody else is actually overshadowing me. Or what if relations leave me? Some people are close to me, now they have started moving out, they don't find me, they are not actually entertaining me anymore. So the more all these things, the destruction of things around me or the final destruction of this body itself is called nasha nimitta mayam, and this is universal. The more I possess things, the more relations I have, the more objects I have, the more I will fear. If the more things I have around me, the more I have to be afraid of. Because either those things are going to leave me or I am going to leave them. The more I have as mamakara, the more this is mine, the more fear I will have that this is actually going to leave me. This is one nasha nimitta bhayam. Then dukkha nimitta bhayam, we discussed the fear I will get sorrow. And here we can even see some people, some old people, they don't go to even doctors because they fear that the doctor will identify something, some issue in their body, some issue in their health, and that they will not be able to take that as an emotionally, they will not be able to take it. So there is that fear also, that is also dukkha nimitta bhayam. It is as there is another example that I can give. Some people go to the doctor and they start crying out in pain even before the doctor injects medicine. So fear of injection is there. So even before the injection is injected, the syringe is injected, they cry. They cry out in pain, although there is no pain. Again, this is dukkha nimitta bhayam, the fear that they might get pain in the future. And if we see this dukkha nimitta bhayam, people actually suffer more due to the fear than actually the event when it happens. So it is only the fear of the sorrow. Actually, when the sorrow comes, you will not have that much of pain in your mind or sorrow in your mind as much as the problem or issues that we face even before it happens because of the fear that we have in the mind. Dukkha nimitta bhayam, another example we can say, we fear, or many people, we fear as we grow old, what will happen to ourselves, whether we will get bedridden, whether we will be hospitalized, whether we will be creating problems for others, whether we will have problem in doing things ourselves. And therefore some people even pray for quick and easy death for me, anayasana maranam. They pray for this. That is another fear of dukkha nimitta bhayam. So we saw nasha nimitta bhayam, dukkha nimitta bhayam. Then there is ajnana nimitta bhayam. Ajnana nimitta bhayam is, as I said, fear of ignorance. We always fear the unknown. We always fear what is known to us, what is unknown to us. That's why we fear darkness. Because why do we fear darkness? Because we don't know what is around us. There is ignorance about what is where. The same place, the house, it does not give us fear when the lights are on or during the day. But once the lights are switched off, it is dark, and if we have to go from one room to another room, there is a fear. The fear of ignorance, the fear of darkness. We fear meeting new people. When we go for a conference and we are asked to speak, if it is the same subject, but if we know the people, who are going to be in the meeting, we have less fear. But if the people around us are new to us, we don't know them, then there is more fear. Again, ignorance. We don't know them and therefore there is fear. Ajnana nimitta bhayam. And we fear anything new for the same reason, because new represents ignorance. I don't know what is in it, and therefore I am afraid of it. And this ignorance causes a fear in us. So these are the different types of fear, and we discussed what are the causes of this fear. Basically, we have basically understood fear. We are trying to understand fear now. Now we have to understand how we can overcome this fear. But before we go there, let us also try to see the other side of fear. we'll see the other side of fear. Then we will try to see how we can get to Abhayam as Bhagavan has prescribed. As in, what is the other side of fear? The other side of fear is fear as a virtue. Fear as a good virtue. Should there be fear in us? If so, what sort of fear? Fear is an indication of mental maturity. In fact, in the 18th chapter, Bhagavan is going to say that being afraid on dharmic matters is actually a virtue. We have to fear about dharma. We have to fear whether we are following dharma. Because we have to ask ourselves, if fear is something so negative as we discussed so far, why was it created in the first place? Why was fear created in our mind in the first place? Fear is necessary. Fear is a necessary emotion that every jiva or every insect, be it insect, animal, whatever it is, it should have, or it has, and it has to be used for the right purpose. Fear is actually created by Bhagavan to protect ourselves. Fear is a protective measure. Certain insects or animals can sense fear whenever their predators are around. You can see fear is necessary as an emotion, because only then, using that, they will be able to sense whether their predators are around or not. Otherwise, they might get eaten up. If fear is not there, we won't live a long life. We ourselves, for humans also, if we don't have strength to fight and overcome against these things, it is better to be afraid and seek shelter. We need to have this fear. People follow rules. So in Singapore, people follow rules very diligently. People follow rules not because they want to follow, but there is a fear of punishment. There is a fear of punishment. There is a fear of fine. Traffic rules, for example. Nobody follows it out of common sense. Because sometimes you might just say you don't want to follow because you don't feel like following. Only if there is a fear, you will follow it diligently. So fear is actually a God-given prasadam. But prasadam, it has to be taken as prasadam, as in it has to be taken in that right portion only. When Tirtha Prasadam is given to us, we are given only a drop of water. In the same way, fear has to be taken, consumed or had as a virtue only for that particular, for limited fear only should be there in our mind. Bhayam has to be there for certain things and in some limited quantity only. When we were small kids, we were even brought up saying that be afraid of Bhagavan. There is a fear of God that was created. We use this word, God-fearing person. In Tamil we have said, you follow this, otherwise Swami Kanna Kuttam. We say the Bhagavan or Ishvara will actually pierce your eyes if you don't follow what you are supposed to do. Now that fear at that particular age is okay. That's okay. Because at that time we don't know what we should follow, why we should follow things, why people are saying. because we don't have the mental maturity to say what is good, what is bad at that point of time. So fear kind of works as an instrument for us to get that habit of doing the correct things. But at this age, or as we grow older, even by the age of 16, 17, we should not be God-fearing. Because Bhagavan is Abhaya Swarupam. It is God cannot be someone who can be afraid of. God has to be someone, or Ishvara has to be someone whom we should be able to understand. So fear is needed at certain stages for certain things, but not at all times. We'll have to remember. In whatever things that will bring nasham to us, whatever will cause our destruction, which is basically anything adharmic, there should be a fear. In adharmic things, there should be a fear. In fact, having fear for adharmic things is an indication of mental maturity. It shows that we are moving from tamasic to rajasic to more towards sattvic personality. So having fear in those situations, those cases is good. Remember, having fear or getting fear is not a papa. It's not a sin to have fear. Fear can help us to go in the right path. It will help us choose the correct path. Fear should be there on Adharma. And to start with, when we don't have an understanding of Shastras, even having fear on Ishvara, Bhagavan is good, is okay. But as we study Shastras, Bhagavan is not someone who has to be feared. Bhagavan is somebody who has to be understood. We'll have to understand what is Bhagavan or who is Bhagavan. Fear should not be there because we might face sorrow in the future. That should not be the cause of fear. Fear should not be there for following Shastras. And fear should not be there due to our imagination, our projection, mental projection. That should not be the one which is causing fear for us. We might say, oh, I have this fear. And why? Because the last time this person did this to that person, so I fear that he might do it to me. So there is all mental projections. So fear should not be there as a mental projection. So we've analyzed the fear. What causes fear? What is the other side of fear? Now, how to attain this fearlessness? How to attain this Abhayam? How do we remove these unwanted fears? What are the ways to remove fear? Now here we will kind of discuss ideas, as in we will discuss different levels of removing fear. The highest level, what is the best way to remove fear? And then if it is actually doesn't work for us, then what is the next best thing? Then what is the next best thing? So we will try to analyze in that order, from highest to lowest. How can we actually remove fear? If we are able to follow the first step, well and good. Then the others may not be needed for us. Then we can just go on with the first one and then be able to remove all the fear. Otherwise, we will have to go to the next step. Either we will not be able to follow because it's too difficult, or it's not kind of thing that will work out for me. The first step, the highest step is Vairagya. Vairagya. Vairagya is dispassion. And that is what Bhadrahari also says. Vairagya eva Abhayam. Only Vairagyam will give us fearlessness. That is how he completes that sloka. He says, Nranam bhuvi sarve vastu bhayam nitam vairagyam eva abhayam. He says. See, how does this vairagya give us abhayam? We have seen that whenever we have a desire, whenever we have an attachment, that attachment or that desire is what manifests as fear. When we desire something very deeply, that manifests as fear. How do we explain this? For example, there are so many things that might get destroyed in this world, right? There are so many people dying around us on a daily basis. There are so many things that are getting destroyed on a daily basis. There are wars happening, there are famines, there are people who die of diseases. There are so many things that are happening around us. But we don't get afraid of those things. We don't have we don't have fear on those things. But on things where my attachment is, I fear of losing it. Somebody close to me whom I have attachment on, if that person falls sick, then I get this fear that person might leave me. Or if there is something that I like and there could be a nasham for this, something that I possess, that I desire, then I have this fear that I might lose it. So when we talked about this fear of this nasha bhayam, actually the important thing is that nasham does not give me fear. It does not give me fear directly, because nasham, destruction, if it has to give me fear, any destruction in this world has to give me fear. Nasham only gives me sorrow if the thing is very attached to me and it goes through destruction, then it gives me sorrow. The thing that I am attached to, when it is going to undergo nasham, or if I have this fear, if I have this feeling that it is going to go through nasham, then I get this fear. So basically the raga, the attachment, basically manifests itself into three emotions. Bhayam, then krodham or lobha. Bhayam is fear, krodham is anger, lobha is greed. What happens? Bhayam and krodham. How does the desire or the attachment manifest itself as bhayam? I have a desire of something. I desire a particular thing. It could be a possession, it could be a position in a position or in the society. It could be name, fame, whatever. It could be wealth. It could be something that I want to achieve, or it could be a person, relation that I want to acquire, whatever. But if there is a person who comes in the way of my desire, if there is somebody else who is actually as a competitor for that, and if that person is more powerful than me, as in that person has a better chance of that, then I get bhayam, I get fear. But if the person who comes in the way of my desire is weaker than me, as in I have a better chance than the other person, and I think that I can do it, then I get krodham, I get anger. I am angry with the other person for actually unnecessarily coming in this way. So this desire has manifested either as bhayam or as krodha. And lobha too. What happens when it comes to lobha? If I am able to fulfill that desire, and I get that, what happens sooner or later? I don't get contented. There is no contentment. So because of which I get lobha. I get this greed. of getting more. So how do I actually get away from this fear? By having Vairagya. So this opposite of this raga is Viraga. Viragasya bhavaha Vairagya. So whatever we possess, be it wealth, property, fame, money, position, appreciation, importance, whatever, so on and so forth, when we become attached to those and we fear of losing it, we fear that we will lose this importance, we will fear that we will lose this appreciation, life becomes more complicated. Life becomes more and more filled with anxiety. Every moment is anxious for us because we don't know when it is going to go away. So that is number one. So the best way to get Abhayam is having Vairagya, having a dispassionate attitude towards everything around us. Now if that is going to be very difficult to achieve, having a Vairagya bhava, then the second step will be Viveka. What is Viveka and how do we actually use Viveka to overcome it? We will see it in the next class. If there are any questions, comments, we can discuss. Okay. There are no questions. We'll see again in the next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Swasti Prajabhyah Paripalayantam Nyayena Margena Mahimahishah. Gobrahmanebhyo Shubhamastu Nityam Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu.